Hello and welcome to our debate at the European Parliament in Brussels. Today is the International Day of the Girl, and to mark this occasion, over 1,000 girls around the world are working with Plan International to conduct takeovers of positions of power. These girls are stepping into the shoes of roles such as presidents, CEOs, mayors, and more. And these takeovers are to deliver the powerful message that girls are no longer going to be undervalued, undermined, or underestimated, so that girls can get equal. Now today we will be discussing girls' rights and how the European Union can support girls' rights around the world through international development. And let me introduce our panelists. To my left, we have Arne Lietz, who is the German member of the European Parliament for the S&D group and also a member of the Committee on Development Cooperation. And we also have Linda McAvan, who is the British member of the European Parliament for the S&D group and the chair of the Committee on Development Cooperation. And on my right, we have Chamathya Fernando, who is from Sri Lanka and a member of Plan International's Global Young Influencers Group, and also newly appointed to the World Board of the World Association of Girl Guides and Girl Scouts, and she is the youngest member of that board. Now, I myself am Bhavana. I am from the United States, and I'm currently a student at the University of Alabama. I'm also a member of Plan International's Young Influencers Group, and I've worked with that organization for about 2 years now. And so today I'd like to hear from our panelists about how the European Union can help girls unlock their leadership ability and become more successful in 2018. So my first question for Chamathya. You're from Sri Lanka, which receives quite a bit of aid from the European Union. So what I'd like to know from you is, what are your expectations for how the EU can deliver on their previous commitment to the Sustainable Development Goals?
Thank you, Bhavna, for the introduction. And as a young girl coming from a country like Sri Lanka, which is the developing nation, I see that when we speak about gender equality and putting girls' rights into forward, and I feel that we have learned lessons from our Millennium Development Goals and where we had gaps and challenges in putting girls' rights into the agenda. But I think learning from that, we've come to the SDGs, and my expectations would be that we being sensitive to the fact that girls and young women face double discrimination because of our gender and our age. And when we speak about women's rights and the struggles and violence, discrimination, lack of economic opportunities for girls, we sometimes neglect the fact that girls and young women have different issues and different kind of challenges they have to face when we have to come to forward. So I would say that for me as a girl or young woman coming from a country like Sri Lanka, we get support and aid on different programs and initiatives, for example, on gender-based violence that the EU Commission funds us. So in that sense that we need to put the budgeting of how gender mainstreaming when it comes to the SDGs, and I mean it's just not the particular goal, but all goals needs to focus on how it affects the lives of girls and women in that sense. And we also have to see how we can finance certain initiatives by girls and how we can bring girls and young women to lead to positions of power, to decision-making level, and not just somebody speaking for us in a platform, but having them participate and discuss their issues and bring in recommendations for the issues that we face.
Yeah. Okay, thank you so much. So after hearing Chamathya's concerns about the SDGs and how the EU can support that, I'd like to know, what has the European Parliament done in the past to support the Sustainable Development Goals, and how are you going to address Chamathya's concerns in your future support?
Well, maybe to say that I think you're absolutely right about the change from the Millennium Development Goals to the Sustainable Development Goals, because in the Millennium Development Goals, we counted numbers, how many children went to school, how access improved for health, but we didn't look at the gender aspects enough. My first ever visit to Africa, I went to Ghana, and the first thing I realized was by the end of the primary school, there were no girls left in school. So what we have done now, we're changing the way we look at our investments, and we require that in each country there's an EU embassy, a delegation, and we're asking them to monitor every single programme of expenditure to say what is the gender dimension and is it reaching everybody, so that, as you said, the SDGs theme is nobody should be left behind, and that includes girls and young women.
And you?
Thank you for, first of all, being here. I think you're doing an extraordinary work. I had the privilege and luck growing up with 3 strong sisters and a mother who was doing politics. So I think if we have more women being involved, we would have a different world, and we have to work for that one. I think, as Linda just said, we are focusing that the SDGs itself, that they came to existing, was also of big help from the European Union to have these goals. And the gender goal is a very important one, and the European Union also gives money. So it's not only by the embassy, but we are talking inside the European Parliament that we focus primarily also on the gender issue, that if money comes from the European Union, we are one of the biggest donor for a donor for humanitarian aid, that we are believing strongly in to bring these goals to real existing by planning how we plan the budget we give. And so that is an important thing. This is our homework we have to do here. And also what we are keen is to visit. When we go, we have many missions. We go as parliamentarians ourselves. And it's also important to showcase what we are interested in. So visiting gender programs is something on our agendas we are always highlighting and feel very important about.
Okay. Thank you so much. I appreciate talking about how we can go into those countries with the EU embassies. I think that's very interesting to hear about. And a huge part of girls' rights now is youth activism. Chamathya and I have gotten to know each other's activism work in the Youth Influencers Group. So I wanted to ask you to share, what are some of the challenges that you've faced as a youth activist?
Yeah. For me, in the time span that I worked as a youth advocate for girls' rights and young women's issues, I felt that sometimes when we speak out on these issues, especially in my country, that people don't necessarily take it in a positive way, because we speak about sensitive issues like gender-based violence, sexual and reproductive health and rights. But I also feel that the role that EU plays in making countries accountable, how their citizens' rights are saved, their democratic rights are practiced, and how they work on media freedom. And I feel in that way we have progressed, but there's a lot more work that needs to be done, especially in empowering youth activists to be able to speak out and express the issues that they face in grassroots level, and especially on issues like gender-based violence and the lack of sexual and reproductive health services. And so therefore I feel that as a youth activist, you need to bring in these initiatives and programs so that it reaches the people who really need it. These vulnerable groups in our rural communities, in indigenous communities around the world, not just in my region or in my country. So I feel that maybe if the EU could support initiatives like ours to bring that education, to put the girls in the lead, to empower them to take leadership, then I think we will have a huge change of how girls and young women take part in decision making or engage in economic activities or taking their lead to make change in their own communities.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
So in the vein of empowering youth activists, how does the European Parliament currently provide resources for young activists in developing countries, and what are those resources? Are they accessible? So can you speak to that?
I think when I've been out on the ground, we've seen some fantastic projects, even in some of the most difficult circumstances. I was in northern Uganda, and we met refugees, and it was, I think, 85% women and children refugees coming from South Sudan. And the EU, together with lots of other partners, is working to provide funds to give these young women, often have been victims of violence, a voice. And we met them, and what was good was they were telling us what they wanted. Because I don't think we can sit here in Brussels and design projects for people in different countries, because they know their countries best and they know their own needs best. So that the worst thing in the world is for us to sort of have preconceived ideas of what people want. We have to listen to what people want at grassroots organisations. What sometimes it surprises you because what they wanted more than anything else, these women in Uganda, was education for themselves. And sometimes they were very young, they either had children themselves or they were actually responsible for younger brothers and sisters. And they said to us, please help us get some education in this area. It's very difficult. And there were problems of fees, etc. Things which the fees, we were told the schools were free. We found in reality, no, it's not, because you have to buy uniforms. There's all kinds of barriers. So that's why these listening to people is really important, because you can design a program, but unless you know the reality on the ground, so the grassroots is vital.
Okay.
We are working also on the issue of microcredits. That is an important issue to help people starting their small businesses. And actually, by numbers, women are much more successful to start their business and to have, through microcredits, a great opportunity. We talked a lot about the latest, what is on the development aid. How can you use also bank accounts for women by IT? Many countries only have cell phones. They have their bank account on their cell phone. And so if women get their own salary, not the husband, we have a huge difference. So there are small steps, even through technology. We were amazed, and this is important that we were told by lobby groups, generally saying the SDGs, the women equality situation, is not perfect in Europe as well. So the SDGs are also, to us, very important. And still, we need more groups who actually support us here from our civil societies in the European Union to actually push a bit further on the women gender issues. And so you have different European societies where they are better or less better balanced. It's also history. We are coming up from ourselves, but even prices are very important. As we had a prize for a Sakharov Prize, a human rights award for someone, as you mentioned, sexual reproductive health, but also violence against women, rape. And so we gave a human rights award to someone who now becomes a Nobel Prize winner because he helped women who got raped in very crisis and difficult situations. So this is still an issue in our societies against violence against women and the family and the kids. We have to face ourselves, but even so, we can give, through our programs, more support in countries where they are much more needed and big help being done. So there are many dimensions, and I think we have to remind ourselves SDGs are for all of us.
Okay.
And so experiencing that, then we give also more money to these SDG fields around the world.
All right. Thank you so much for all of your input, and thank you for watching. This is how girls get equal in 2018.